Hi, my name is Steve Robbins, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's event. I'm the president of the Boston Product Management Association, and it's great to see everybody on tonight. At the Boston Product Management Association, we are entirely focused on helping people to transform their careers with learning that inspires, just like tonight's event, and we do all of it in a welcoming community. That includes a series of monthly events, as I've said already, career development, including our recently revamped job board. If you didn't know it already, it now costs absolutely nothing for employers to post jobs to the BPMA job board. We also have a monthly product executive forum, mentorship, and a blog. I'll talk more about each of those in a second. So at BPMA, like I said, we have monthly events. We have the Product Hub blog and a lot of great ways that you can grow your career. We also work very closely with a few other organizations, including Agile Product Open, Women in Product, and Product Camp Boston. Our goal at the Boston Product Management Association is to create one of the world's most vibrant, active, and supportive communities for product managers and product marketers. And the only way that we can do all of that is with dedicated sponsors and partners. Companies like 280 Group, Perfetti Media, Pendo, NDT, Proficient, Pragmatic Institute, and others. And at this point, I'd like to actually introduce one of our lead partners, 280 Group, and they are tonight's featured sponsor. I'm going to turn it over to Roger, who is the VP of Marketing at 280 Group. Roger?
Great, thanks very much, Steve. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I was told I could speak to you for 3 minutes, but I'm going to try to cut that to at least half that time. 280 Group has sponsored BPMA and Product Camp Boston for a number of years. We love to see PM communities learn and grow together, so we're very committed to helping these organizations out. Hopefully, you've seen our name in BPMA Communications. If you want to go to the next slide, Steve. But if you're not familiar with us, we're focused on making product managers and product management teams successful in building products that matter. Matter to you, matter to your company, and most of all, that matter to your customers. We offer a complete set of services to help you out. Training, and Steve, you can click on that one again, process improvements and tools to help PMs work better and work smarter. We engage with product management teams too to help the whole team improve, so we can help product management fully lead product development and innovation with our team optimizations. We provide consulting for tough problems, such as moving through a digital transformation, and we even help teams hire talent. Now, we offer a lot of free resources, so please check us out at 280group.com. And tonight, I'm excited to offer a free download that we built called an Earned Influence and Authority Workbook. And this is a workbook that covers 5 different topics. I imagine some of them are going to come up tonight during your conversation. And this workbook was co-developed by Pam Schure, who's on the panel this evening. So the download's right there, and I think either Steve or Charlie will add that to the chat box so that you can easily click it and download it. It's a free download, and use that to hone up your communication and your influence skills. So that's it about 280 Group. If you're more interested about us, check us out at 280group.com. And now, like the rest of you, I'm excited to hear about the panel. So back to you, Steve.
Great. Thanks so much, Roger. And thank you again for being a longtime sponsor of BPMA.
Our pleasure.
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lynne Levy, who is going to be the moderator for tonight's panel. Lynne?
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is such a fabulous topic in the world of product, being able to influence without authority. We're going to introduce the panel. Just to start, my name is Lynne Levy. I'm a product mentor and coach. I help product managers get promoted, move into leadership while doing what they love and loving what they do. So I'd love it if each person in the panel could do a quick intro. So why don't we start with Doug?
All right, good evening. I'm Doug. I'm the Director of Product at Alignable. We are a small business referral network that enables small businesses to connect, recommend, and share knowledge with each other. I've been in product for about 10 years, and prior to that, I was a software engineer and a UI designer. I got my MBA from Babson College and was actually lucky enough at that time to study with Professor Alan Cohen, who actually wrote a book called Influence Without Authority. After that, I took about 9 years outside of tech to start and grow a handful of businesses in the voting industry, and have spent about the last 4 years now back in tech in senior product roles at Vistaprint and now at Alignable.
All right, thank you, Doug. Let's have Bill introduce himself next.
Hey everyone, my name is Bill Farrell. I've been a product leader for about 15 years now. Really focused on SaaS companies that are moving up market into the enterprise space. So most recently, I was with the product design collaboration software InVision, and previously as the VP of product and design at a company called HelloSign, which was acquired by Dropbox in 2019. So I just recently moved back to the Boston area from the San Francisco Bay Area, and really excited to be more involved with BPMA.
All right, fabulous. Let's have Nancy introduce herself.
Okay, I'm on mute now. Great. Hey guys. Yeah, I am Nancy Lee. I am the Director of Product of Edge Computing at Cox Communication. Actually, I recently got promoted to be a director. It's my 4 days as a director recently. Thank you guys. Yeah, so I'm relatively new into this role compared with all the panelists. I started my career as the youngest engineering PhD from Boston University. Then I became a product manager. 4 years later, now I was promoted to be a director of product. And my passion is actually helping engineers and international professionals to become a product manager. I have a YouTube channel called Dr. Nancy Lee, which is teaching product management, interview skills, how to become a product manager. Feel free to check it out, Dr. Nancy Lee. I also teach product management bootcamp as well. Happy to share with everyone tonight.
All right, fabulous. Let's go to Lincoln next.
Thanks. Yeah, hi, my name is Lincoln Pasquina. I'm an associate director of the Smart Trials product team at Foundation Medicine. FMI is a cancer diagnostics and data company based here in Boston. I came to product about 3 years ago. Before that, I was in consulting, and I'm actually a bench-trained scientist. But since throughout all the different roles that I've had, there's been a lot of need to influence without authority. And so here in product management, it's certainly an important topic. So I'm excited to talk tonight.
All right, and thank you. And then Pamela.
Hi, I'm Pamela Schure, the Director of Products and Services at 280 Group. I have been a product manager for over 20 years. I spent a lot of time working in international product management after my MBA at, what did I do? I did a mechanical engineering degree at UC San Diego, and then later on an MBA at Columbia University. Most recently wrote the product management for dummies a couple of years ago. And I have the privilege of overseeing a group of very opinionated product managers within 280 Group. So if I can get them to agree on anything, I think I've won that day. So we have a lot of theoretical ways of influencing people, but it's what works on the ground.
All right, awesome. Thank you all. All right, so let's start with the basics. So I'm going to first turn this over to Doug. So Doug, from your perspective, what are some of really the top skills that a product manager needs to influence up, down, and across the organization?
Sure. I'd like to mention two values first before I get into skills that I think you need to be seen as having from the rest of your team. The first is certainly honesty. It's important that people see you as trustworthy and having integrity so that they can believe what you're saying. And the second is conscientiousness, so that they know that you're reliable and you're actually going to follow through on what you say. But then once you have those, I'd say there's probably four skills. The first is just being able to build relationships with the people around you. And these aren't just like, hi, what'd you do this weekend? These are deeper relationships, so you can really understand somebody. And that leads into the second one, which is being able to identify what motivates and interests the other person. Professor Cohen called these currencies, but it's really like, what do they value? Sometimes they value recognition. Sometimes it's feeling important or wanting to do a certain type of work. The third would then be being able to explain your idea in a manner that resonates with that person's, beliefs. So this is a little bit of selling, being able to craft your message so that you explain to them how this is good for them and will benefit them as well as you and the company. And then finally is just being someone that's seen as influenceable. So you want to be able to demonstrate the qualities you're expecting to see in someone else, and people will be more likely to listen to your ideas and allow your influence if they also feel like you're the type of person that would have an open mind and listen to theirs.
I love some of those ideas. A lot of it's about meeting the other person where they are versus forcing them to come to you. So Bill, other thoughts on what are the key skills we need to influence?
I think Doug had a really great answer. I was going to talk about being objective, so being like the unbiased party that's just representing the facts. I think the thing that I'd add is to do the work, go into conversations prepared, be data driven, talk about the data that you've collected to be recommending what you're recommending. And yeah, I think otherwise I would 100% agree with Doug.
So how do you folks think, and I'll open this question up to a broader group, as you go from, let's say, product owner to product manager to senior product manager to principal or group to director, how does this change how you influence and who you influence? So Nancy, I'd love it if you could take a crack at that one.
Muted.
It looks like Nancy is muted.
I think you have to unmute her.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, the host need to unmute me. Maybe I should do not unmute me next time. Great. Right. So for this one, I have a lot to say. It's more based on personal experience because I just went through from individual contributor and to a manager, of senior product manager to a director. I believe the process influencing who you influence and communicate is different, depends on different stages. For example, when we just got started as an individual contributor, as a product owner, or technical product manager, one side of product management, the way you influence and communicate, the people are more towards the engineering side of business. And also as your responsibility became bigger as a full product manager, you get to know the marketing side of and sales, and you need to train them. You need to go see customers, close deals together as a product manager. Then where you influence them for those two group of people is more towards how are you able to communicate from the customer perspective? Are you on the same side of the table? Maybe it's as a metaphor of battle, are you on the same side of the battle to continue to solve the problem together? And then as we become, let's say, a manager of senior product managers, at that time, the way we communicate and influence the people we work with are other managers in different departments and gradually get exposure to decision makers within the company. And then at that time, the way we communicate is also depends on who the whole department, their responsibilities, how you're able to strategically create a win-win situation among two different groups. And recently, as I becoming a director, the interesting part regarding influence that becoming how are you able to sell yourself and sell your team and sell your ideas to senior executives. And such as the first week I'm on, I was asked to give presentations about different strategies, where we're going. And in that case, we need to understand how can we use maybe like very short amount of time to quickly emphasize where this directions, the strategy, the roadmap is to go. How would you influence those C-level of executives of your company?
So this brings us to the next question, and I'm going to start with Bill on this one. I know my clients deal with this. It is hard. It is challenging as a senior product manager. You go in front of an executive team on a new product idea, on the roadmap, and a vision. Many times as a product manager or senior product manager, you don't necessarily have visibility to their priorities, but yet you have to influence them. what are some of the key tools, skill sets, or recommendations, Bill, that you have to really, as a senior product manager or product manager, having to influence multiple levels up?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like clear, articulate communication becomes extremely important. The higher you're trying to influence in the organization. So these are folks that have a million things going on and don't have nearly the amount of context that you and your peers have about a particular decision to be made. So you really want to get in there and very clearly, concisely articulate the background, sort of show them the data on why, just give them the context that they need to really grasp the recommendation that you're making. I think also just, you're gonna have to learn a number of different languages as a PM. And to Nancy's point, I mean, earlier on in your career, you're speaking, you're talking the language with engineering, but soon you're gonna have to learn all the various functions in your organization, what matters to them, what they're uniquely tasked with, what makes them successful, what their unique concerns are, and speak to those and get ahead of those concerns, work them into your recommendation conversation up front so that they don't need to ask about it, because that's gonna give them the impression that you've been thorough and you've done your homework. So those are a couple recommendations that I would make.
How about you, Doug? What are some of your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bill. And the one thing that I would add is typically people that are, very senior in the organization are responsible for delivering on key metrics like OKRs or KPIs. So it's really useful to make sure that you're tying your pitch into those metrics that they're responsible for delivering, because that's then going to tie your success and their success together.
Great ideas. I'm going to throw one more question at you, Doug and Bill. So what happens, you're presenting to a senior leadership team, and as we all know, senior leaders can get emotional, frustrated if they're not receiving the information they want. What do you recommend on how a product manager stays in the moment and continues to be able to influence that senior leader without getting triggered?
I can start. This is really a key element of emotional intelligence. And I would strongly encourage all product managers to become well-versed in that, because it will help you not only as a product manager, but just further your career in general. And this is, number one, is just being an active listener, making sure you're really understanding what they're saying and what their objections are. Because if you don't really understand it, you're not going to be able to respond with, a relevant answer. There's also, though, a balance between fighting for your idea when you know it's right versus understanding that maybe it's the right time to walk away and live to fight another day. You're not really going to help your cause if you just push and push and push. That's going to destroy your credibility for the next time. So there is this balance of like, do I keep fighting because I really believe in it, or is the writing on the wall and I should gracefully exit and know that I can come back and try again later?
Awesome answer. Anybody else want to take a tackle at that emotional intelligence that product managers have to keep under control when they're dealing with those targets coming from senior leaders?
I think the important thing is to breathe.
Yes.
It sounds very easy to say, but in that moment, know that you don't have to give a response right away, that you can take your time and take a couple of deep breaths and then keep going. And then to kind of echo one of the concepts that Douglyss, which was you might want to back off and come back and fight another day. Think of yourself as the glacier. You know where you're going to go. You're eventually going to carve that valley, but you're not doing it in a day. It's time after time after time. And your senior managers, sometimes they're not listening for very much. So the pithier the little statement that you can give them, the better off you are. And then if you repeat it long enough, they'll come back and they'll repeat it back to you. Hey, how's that, whatever it is, project going? And you, yes, I've made progress, right? And eventually you're going to reach the end of the valley.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, let's move to the next one. I'm going to call on a couple of the panelists to show a little just vulnerability. So what challenges have you faced or mistakes you've made as you tried to influence during your career within the organization? And what did you do? How'd you get around the challenges? So I think I'll throw that one to Lincoln first.
Yeah, thanks. So some of the challenges that you might face, I mean, the obvious one is everyone has more good ideas than you have engineers to work on them. And so like starting with that assumption, you really, to echo what's already been said, remember that other people don't have the same goals as you. So even if your idea is great and will meet your goals, it may not have anything to do with what they actually want to solve. So really trying to understand what other people are driven by, getting to know them, being transparent and inviting others to be transparent, trying to get on their team but even then it can be pretty difficult. I've honestly seen company to company negotiations where someone will just cut to the chase and say, this is what I want. Or even more transparently, like, these are my annual goals of what I'm being graded on, or what my bonus is tied to. And they lead with that. They don't necessarily ask that of the other, but it's making themselves completely vulnerable and transparent that lets everyone exhale a little bit and cut right to the chase. That way, and especially if you know someone else's OKRs or KPIs, then you know how to position your argument a little bit better. And it also helps you let them explain their decision to their stakeholders or their managers if you can get inside the head a little bit more.
Can I just take that, Lynn, can I just take that a little bit further?
Of course you can.
I want you to think about, Lincoln, when you said that, I thought, geez, have you ever looked at someone and they're like, yes, they want to build something, they want to create something, and that's they're trying to promote something, right? And you have other people and you look at them and they're just existing in the state of fear,
yeah,
right? And if you see that fear, you're going to struggle to make headway with someone who's in a state of fear. And it's called prevention focus and promotion focus. So somehow you have to get someone with fear in their hearts to turn around and say, I know that this is scary. What if we looked at it as the best result you could possibly get, right? And so if you can shift them, you have a much, much better chance of making headway. But remember that, in fear, you're not going anywhere.
Anybody have anything else to add? That I'm going to add my little a quick comment on that too.
I have one thing that I'll add in, which is something actually Bill brought up earlier. The times that I've typically struggled the most with influence, it's because I was failing to provide enough context. And Bill talked about this when he talked about, influencing up. We all know the context, and sometimes we fail to make that really clear to the other people. We assume that they know what we know. And it's really important to hit all those points, like what's the problem or opportunity? What data suggests this might be promising? What's it going to cost? What's the upside? What's the downside? And making sure you're creating the full picture. That's the mistake that I've made a few times in the past.
Awesome. And I want to reemphasize what Pamela said. I mean, influence, and the biggest challenge of influence is relationships, and you need to trust each other. You need to have that human connection between you to really get on the same side of the table and and figure out what you need to do together. All right, I love this next question because I'm not sure what the right or wrong answer is. So when you are influencing, data or emotion or both? Let's start with Lincoln on that one.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to jump in. I definitely say both. You'll probably need data, but sometimes data isn't enough, that you can't necessarily reduce something to a column in a spreadsheet and you can compare NPVs. In reality, what feature gets worked on next? People have preconceptions and their own stories that they tell themselves, or they could even be biased in how they interpret your data. But and even if you do have good data, it may be an apples to oranges. That if your feature is going to add new users and someone else's feature is going to retain existing users, they're both, how do you even compare that? So yes, the baseline is you need to have some sort of way to quantify, but you may also need an evangelist. That it's going to be you, but you're probably not going to be the only one who's working on something. You need to be able to tell a story around that data. Like, why is it important? So definitely both.
Excellent. How about you, Doug? What are your thoughts on that one?
The one thing that I would add is psychology really indicates that people make decisions with emotion, but then they justify it with data. So you need to remember that. So even if you think you can get someone to make the decision based on the emotion, they're still going to need the data to justify it to themselves and to other people. So you do need that balance of both.
And I would even say if you come in with the data without a story, without a compelling emotion or good context, they won't buy in either. So you need both. Anybody else have anything to add on this fascinating piece, emotion versus data?
Well, actually, Lynn, I think what you said, the background to that is you have to start with why. You have to start with the context. If you don't, you're going to lose everything. And that allows you to build that emotional base. And then you can add the data in later, and then they'll say, yes, we can do this.
Exactly.
Start with why.
There's so data and emotion. I mean, emotion I think is really powerful to use to influence, but it shouldn't always be your emotion. I think one powerful tactic you can use is using customer emotion.
Absolutely.
And storytelling as well. But like, I can think of a time where the lack of a feature was causing our customers so much pain that a person at the company needed to do 2 days of work every quarter in order to true up the system. And so I basically took a customer quote from that person who was experiencing that pain once a quarter, and I used that as a storytelling tactic to develop some empathy for the pain that the customer's going through. And then I paired that with, how many customers do we have that are in potentially similar scenarios, same team size, et cetera. I use that data to sort of kind of show the magnitude of a problem in order to influence the audience to buy in that this is a good initiative.
And it's an art being able to, as you're presenting, especially as you go up the hierarchy, as you're presenting ideas and the vision and to get buy off the data and emotion and the storytelling, you've got to weave it together, which obviously takes practice. So from a product management perspective, the more storytelling and using data and emotion, the better. All right, so let's talk about storytelling. How do you guys how do you folks during your career, have you used storytelling to influence? And let's start with Bill.
Yeah, I think storytelling is one of those skills that, it's hard to learn. It is learnable, but I think it's also really powerful in influencing folks. And I think to double down on something that I heard earlier around, I think Doug was talking about providing context. Storytelling is about, when you get in a room with some folks that you're looking to influence, storytelling is about reminding people of the situation, the pain point, the problem, the opportunity. Like, I find that people that are most successful in influencing execs and cross-functional execs do so by like giving that context every single time, taking them for the customer journey, and then just like make it interesting, make it something that's interesting to listen to. So yeah, I mean, I guess storytelling, it's one of those things that it's hard to get better at, but it is a really important skill to
Well, Bill, I'm just gonna pitch in on that because we do have something in that document that Roger was mentioning earlier that talks about it. And basically, there's a format for doing this well. And one of the key things is try and keep it under 30 seconds. And basically, you state your point, you state a couple of supporting facts or emotions or maybe vignettes from your customer, and then you conclude it somehow, which is sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's a request. There's lots of different things that could come out at the other side. And then I think the most important thing when I've taught this to people is to get them to actually stop talking. The other person has to digest it. So, and that is the hardest thing for a product manager to do. Absolutely.
So awesome. And I love the 30 seconds and keeping it short. So Nancy, what I'd love to understand from you is, especially since congratulations on the awesome promotion, is how have you had to adjust your storytelling skills throughout your career progression to influence?
Great question. And actually, I was about to volunteer to talk more about storytelling. Storytelling, I believe, is one of the most important skills that all the product managers need to master. And same thing as anyone who wants to get into the leadership position. And something in addition to that is actually my promotion is not internal promotion. It's actually during COVID. I got 3 director product offers outside of my prior company, Verizon. And
Awesome.
yeah, that was during COVID. And even the same storytelling skills was used in my interview as well. Now let me talk about my personal experience regarding storytelling, how is the style has changed based on the audience. And for example, as an individual contributor, when I was working for Verizon 4 years ago, the storytelling was focused on how can I influence the sales guys help me to sell more product, to get on the same page of me. That was because at the time, sales always want to make changes, customization for customers. It's very hard for product managers to make 100 different versions of product. And then at that time, the way I focus on storytelling is focus on the customer perspective, why we're solving the problem. As an example, give you guys a real case example is that the product we're trying to sell is help cities to reduce car crashes. And the story I told my sales team was based on set up the example. There was a specific 40 years old guy, like lots of people in the audience at that moment working for Fortune 500 company. And he has a wife, he lived in sunny California, but one day we didn't see him at work. People started to get worried, where did this guy go? And eventually we found him. He was hit in a car accident and got paralyzed. And as we're speaking, he's in the hospital getting treated in Colorado. He was air transported from California to Colorado to get treated. Do you know who that person is? That was my lead engineer who developed the product to help cities reduce car crashes. That was a true story. I didn't want to tell the story, but it happened to be a real true story. But the specific story empowered our entire sales teams to really push this product very hard. And eventually our product was awarded as a mayor's best practices in multiple cities deployed. It's really solving problems, saving people's lives. That's one way of telling stories. Of course, those kind of stories usually do not exist. I wish I don't tell the same story again in the future. It's very sad. But as we progress, and lots of time, when you become a lead or start to manage other product managers, the story you need to tell is how can I make the entire team follow the same directions? And the story we tell in general is more future looking and make very comprehensive, very vague ideas into something everyone can digest and lead to a very clear path. Let me give you another example of the stories I told to my team. That was last year when I was working for Verizon. The story I told was, at the time, Verizon want to launch a product called 5G edge computing. It's decentralized AWS, decentralized cloud, working integrated with 5G. Basically, it's a new technology. But a year ago, nobody knew about the technology. It's a very basically new concept. But the story I told my team was more towards, I listened to a podcast this morning. There was a billionaire, his name is Bill Gross, and Bill failed among 10 or 20 different startups, eventually hit the next one. But one of the product he failed was he was trying to launch a YouTube type of product, on the internet. But when he trying to launch a product, very few customers, less than 10% of customers in the US has broadband technology. Without the broadband, nobody can launch YouTube. Now, Verizon is launching the 5G edge computing. That's the equivalent of the broadband podcast. Without this 5G edge computing and no further like sending people to the moon, those like new crazy technology can be brought into the market. So therefore, as a team, we need to launch this fundamental pass-through technology, breakthrough technology into the market. So the way we tell story really varies based on, do you want to align all the team together to sell a product, or you want all the other senior leadership or other product managers aligned together to build a foundation, push through a new product into the market. So depends on who you talk to, the storytelling strategies is also very different. That's in general what I do. Of course, in interviews, you tell different stories as well. That's how I do storytelling. Sorry, I told 2 long stories in the process.
No, that was great. Thank you, Nancy. Storytelling, to me, storytelling is really one of those fundamental product management skills that we need. So what happens if you can't influence a group? You have to influence sales or marketing or engineering. What do? If you can't get their buy-in? What do you automatically escalate? What are some fallback things that you folks would recommend? And let's start with Lincoln on that one, if that's okay.
Sure. I mean, the way that I like to think of it, if you face a wall in your path, you can go over, you can go around, you can go through, or you can take a different road. And that actually maps pretty well with your different options. If you go over, that's escalating. If you go around, then you might be trying to tell a different story or the same thing in a different way if it's a different group that you can impact. Through is if you have authority, but we're talking about influencing without authority, so I'll drop that for now. Or dropping it, like if you just can't figure it out, or if you realize, then maybe what is the actual problem that they see, and maybe they're right, maybe it's not a great idea. And so as you're trying to evaluate what to do next, try to think like, are you not telling your story well? Are you not actually reaching the right decision makers? Ask yourself honestly, is this not really a good idea that I should be pursuing? Are they right? And not just from your perspective, but your boss's perspective, their boss's perspective. And before you escalate, make sure you understand, will your boss have authority, or are they going to be thing as well, just from a higher vantage point with a little bit more authority? If you're going to do that, make it easy for your boss to step in and make your arguments. That they may not know all the nuances, help them out so that it's easy as possible, and they'll be the most willing and most able to advocate on your behalf.
I love that answer.
I just want to add, Lynn, I want to add something to it, because I was just thinking, if you're a junior PM, sometimes you think, that person that I'm talking to doesn't like me. They're doing it because they don't like me, right? And I think, you have to assume positive intent and sometimes say, let me examine myself. Let me see if someone else can give me a perspective on this. So always remain curious. I think that's one of those really important PM skills that we just need to come back to all the time. Let's remain curious, but it's not personal, because that way is difficult. We end up with a lot more problems that way.
Which is interesting, Pamela, because that gets back to those similar emotions you get when you're in front of a senior leader that triggered, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What have I done wrong?
Oh, I want to add something to it, which is today we didn't touch up on, is because it's elephant in the room. It's about politics. And sometimes you're not able to influence a person was
right.
Not because a person didn't understand, or your data or emotionally doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's because politics. Maybe he or she is representing a different groups, if he said yes to the strategy, even the right strategy, gonna hurt his group. So that's politics also playing a role in it. And to be honest, politics exists everywhere as long as it's human beings. So politics is everywhere. So when we talk about influence, I think as a product managers is also be smart regarding where the different kind of forces going on in the entire organization. How can you navigate very smart in this process as well?
And bring some allies along, right? Just
yep.
Get everybody to be your friend or at least work friend.
All right. Anybody have anything else to add into that one in terms of tools to use when you're just stuck?
And I guess I just want to address, like, I think Lincoln had a really great answer here. You know, when I coach PMs around what to do in these types of scenarios, my goal is to coach as many tactics as possible for them to resolve this. But sometimes the right thing to do is to escalate. And I want to remove the stigma that escalation is failure. Sometimes it is the right thing to do, and it should be used, you know, when needed and responsibly.
Absolutely agree. So let's go back to, so let's start with maybe product managers or newer folks in product management. What are some of the, just the big mistakes that people make, that product managers make early in their career? So if we could give a preview to this audience so they're aware of it and can prevent it. So let's start with product managers. Ooh, and I think Nancy is muted. Technical difficulties.
Let me keep, oh, okay. You're good? Okay.
I'm good. Okay. Speaking of mistakes, I have more mistakes than success stories. So the biggest mistakes I learned as a product manager is not to understand the decision-making process from our customers. At least myself came from an engineering background. I don't think it's that hard to build a product, but the huge difference between whether customers are willing to open the wallet to buy it very eagerly or not. What I mean is that, for example, when we sell product to City of Boston or many different government to help them to reduce car crashes, everybody said we love to buy your product through the entire pilot process, and now it's time to open your wallet to make it pay for it. Of course, we saw challenges. What we discovered was that the decision-making process for the government to pay for anything is different from enterprise customers. Then we need to relearn everything, rebuild our sales strategy. Our entire sales team had to reposition the pitch and everything together. That's the biggest lesson I learned earlier in my career, how to make them want to pay you the way, even if they like it, but how they pay it, the process getting funding to pay for it is also different. Also, product manager needs to think ahead of time.
So I think that's basically saying you're focusing on your piece of the product, but not the entire customer journey.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to focus on everything. And it's the same. I mean, I think for a lot of product managers and junior PMs, they start by saying, we need this because, right? And they give this little piece of the story without having the whole context, right? And not only that, but they just say this is what they want to do, and they don't really tell you why or why it's important.
How about as they move up, let's say to senior product managers?
I think there's a point of arrogance. You know, I've launched, I don't know how many products, right? And have I had failures? Absolutely. Have I had successes? Absolutely. The failures are hubris. They're me believing that I knew better than somebody else. And the successes are because I listened and paid a lot of attention to all the little details.
Anybody else on the panel? Any thoughts on mistakes as you go from product manager to senior product manager in terms of influence?
Yeah, the thing that I see most commonly is not building those personal relationships before you need to rely on them. Because as we've said a number of times, like, your ability to influence is really based on having solid relationships, and building those relationships in advance is your investment later succeeding with that influence. So you need to look far and wide and create those relationships well ahead of the time that you need them.
Doug, can I just take that from there? I have a very simple ratio, and it's my ratio is 5 to 1. I have to have 5 positive interactions in order for me to have a negative one. And most requests I make as a product manager, they're negative. So I am looking to make a lot of friends really early on, and I compliment people about just about anything, shoes, you name it. I am looking to build a lot of bridges, and that goes from the person who picks up the phone all the way through to the CEO. How many favors can I do for other people? Because one day I'm gonna have to call it in, right? It's one of those things.
So what I'm hearing from the audience, from the panel, is it's storytelling and relationships are really 2 of the most critical foundations to being able to influence.
And not boring people. I'm not kidding about that, right? Like that storytelling, that getting people to be really good. Like, what is she going to say next? What is the next cool thing that we're going to do? That's important.
So what is the difference between when you have to influence somebody? Maybe not the difference. How do you know? Listen, I can make this decision myself. I don't need to get anybody else's buy off. I don't need to get their opinion. Don't need to influence them. Where do you draw the line? And I'm going to throw that one to Bill.
Yeah, sure. I have a few thoughts on this one. So I find that this is sometimes a big point of confusion for product teams around decision-making rights. Like if this isn't crystal clear for you as a PM, I really encourage you to have a discussion with your product team, your product leader around this. So like, I mean, PMs should always err on the side of decisiveness, but there are times where your PL might have opinions on when you should be looking at other stakeholders. I think the one question that I would ask myself as to whether this is something I should be making on my own or if I should be looping other stakeholders is, is the result of this decision going to be impacting more teams than just the one that I work on, right? So if I make this decision let's say I make a decision to sunset a feature that's not working very well. Well, like the customer support team is going to be the team that needs to field all the requests about where did this go if you don't kind of loop them into this decision and give them a voice and train them on how to respond to it. So I think that's like a really simple question you can ask yourself. If the answer is yes, then like look for your, who your stakeholders should be. And then I think my final thought on this is just, I've had really good success with using a model like a DAISY model to create clarity on this exact thing. So the roles and responsibilities in a big decision. So the DAISY model really forces you to be deliberate on who is actually making the decision, who is contributing, who are the stakeholders, and who are the informed. And the side benefit of doing this is that I think we've all been in a situation where 6 months from now, you're like, why did we do that again? It gives you a record that you can point to that explains the context and why a decision was made. So if you're not familiar with the DAISY model, I'd highly encourage looking it up and figuring out how you can use this in big decisions.
I'm just going to encourage you too, because people assume the DAISY model and the RACI model are very similar. In fact, they're quite different and they're used for different things. Product managers, we really need to understand a DAISY model. And I think sometimes culturally, some organizations, you can ask forgiveness, and other organizations, you have to get buy-in before you start. And so be very aware of your company culture as to how you're going to get everybody to buy in before you go ahead.
So for those in the audience who may not know the difference, could one of you folks just distinguish the RACI model versus the DAISY model?
I'm happy to do this. The DAISY model has to do with decision-making. And so for a lot of PMs, we get stuck because someone isn't making a decision. And so what we need to do is for someone to say yes or to say no, we need to know who that person is. And we also need to exclude a bunch of people. So we don't want everybody in on every decision. And collaborative organizations end up getting stuck because everybody's kind of trying to get everyone to say yes. That's a DAISY model. With the RACI model, it's who needs to be involved, right? So you may have 4 or 5 people who are responsible for completing a task, but only one of those or 2 of those might be decision makers. So it's a very different perspective.
All right. A couple more questions, and then we're going to head over. If folks from the audience have questions, we'll go to your questions in a quick second. I'm going to throw this one to everybody. So you have a new product manager on your team, and they're ready to roll. They're ready to make decisions and start influencing. Realistically, how quickly can a product manager really be in a position to start to influence? Who'd like to take that one? I see Pam and I see Nancy. Pamela.
It depends. It really depends on your organization. I think as a PM, I tend to start by making smaller decisions, kind of get people used to me doing it. And then I can go for the bigger ones. But trying to put a big stake in the ground early on, that's pretty tough. People need to believe in you, and that takes a little bit of time. Nancy,
Yeah.
what about your team? I don't know.
Yeah, so for my team, I think depends on the definition of influence. I think it will take a shorter amount of time for PM to start to work with engineers, to lead engineering team. That probably take about 3 months to feel comfortable. But regarding influence, if we define influence, being able to make cross-organizational changes, I think would take a relatively longer amount of time. But usually as entry-level product manager, you're not given that responsibility to make such a big influence. If we define the influence to be smaller, only influencing the people around you, which is engineering team to begin with, probably product managers, if you got a good mentor to begin with, probably will take you about like 3 months or so to get used to being able to man the room, woman the room, whatever different ways you want to say it, to start to influence engineers as well.
And it requires the manager to recognize that that's an important skill for their PMs to have and to coach them in how to do that. And maybe sometimes even defer the authority to say, you know, let me have so-and-so speak on this particular topic, right? And so you give your authority to them, you can help speed it up.
Yeah,
It depends on your circumstances.
Agree with what Pam said, and Pamela also remind me of my earlier case. When I was junior PM, I was also like the only like female PM in the team, all the different scenarios. I realized even if I was a product manager being able to give an important task during meetings, especially when I have to present to our senior executives, lots of time I wasn't able to make my voice heard in those meetings. And at the time I need to talk to my managers and other sponsors, other mentors in the organization to tell them the challenges I face. And the advice they gave me is that, Nancy, next time I will walk into the same meeting as you, I'm going to clear the room. When I give you the chance, he's going to drop some hint. Oh, Nancy has something to say. Then something similar to what Pam said, which that's why you need mentors and leaders and managers help you at the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree. You can't really influence without all the positive interactions that Pam talked about. You can't influence without getting some good, quick wins. That if you're a new team, you are worth trusting and worth respecting, the better. And as managers of someone, if you can enable that for your team, then your whole team is going to win a lot more.
All right, anybody from the panel have anything else to add before I hop over to the Q&A coming in from the audience? Okay, this is an interesting one, looking at your questions. How does the effectiveness of influencing strategies vary based on gender? I had to start with that one, guys, because it's
huge. It's actually huge. Yeah, and I work with people over time, and with women, it's interesting because I can probably teach them 3 or 4 tricks or strategies that help them be more effective, but they need to know that they should apply them, right? And there's certain things that work for women that actually don't work for men very well either. So yes, I think there is something to be said for a gender-based influencing technique.
Other thoughts from the group?
I'll tell you what, while people are thinking about it, I had a woman who was an engineer who started being a PM for her same team, and people weren't listening to her. And it was something very simple, but I said, you need to dress more formally when you go to your old team because you need to look different. And then I spoke to her later and she said, yeah, I have a pair of high heels and a jacket. And when I go talk to them, I wear that. And then I come back and I go back to my t-shirt and my sneakers, but I need to use that mechanism to gain influence over this team. And there's a physicality about it that's very powerful.
I think that speaks to this is very interesting, sensitive, and broad topic. It's
It is.
very, that I don't know which angle I need to hit. It's very interesting. So I teach women how to negotiate. My goal is teach 1,000 women. Since last year, I taught 600 already. And before I left Verizon, I taught 150 women in Verizon how to negotiate. What I want to bring up this topic is not about negotiation influence. It's more towards the mindset and perception. On mindset, from women's perspective, when we need to influence, is more towards, do you feel like you have the confidence? Lots of time sometimes we're not portrayed as someone who is very confident when speaking on behalf of ourselves or selling an idea. That's one thing. On the other thing is, even if we are confident, the lots of time the way we carry ourselves, sometimes we giggle a little bit or different things. I have received those kind of feedback in the past. Don't giggle too much, don't laugh too much. And I don't know whether it is a woman thing or different thing, whether it's right advice or not, but I do see this definitely differences between how men and women influence. But I do think that the men and the women can influence towards the same effect if we both know how to use our strengths. How do we build allies? The things I did specifically build for myself is that I intentionally to build lots of allies, more allies than I thought I need, so that I can put them in my back pocket in case the original traditional methodology didn't work. I will reach out to my ally to figure out new strategy to bring bigger influence. Well, apparently so far it works out.
I just want to check with the guys here. So I can't tell, we're all sitting down. Any of you like particularly tall or, large, or I don't know. Is there something about your own physicality that you have had to pay attention to? I know I have a friend who's quite tall and large, and he says he's very careful about not following women, even going down the street, because he knows he intimidates them. So I don't know if you've experienced it from the other side. Pure guess here, guys.
Yeah. I'm 6 feet tall, but I'm not terribly big. I don't know if I just don't seem that imposing, but I don't know. I haven't felt it. It's such an interesting topic because, I mean, even just pointing out the obvious, the men don't know what to say, or like, we don't know what to say publicly necessarily. Mm-hmm. Would like to say, oh, it doesn't matter, but no one can say that with a straight face. Or gender doesn't matter, but at this point still, it's pretty hard to say that as a blanket statement. So recognizing that everyone is going to be in a slightly different position, whether it's gender, whether it is any number of different factors. Just trying to understand how people might perceive you and then just correct them to either ignore or not care, or just try to shine through whatever prejudices might be coming at you.
I think we
But
have
I don't
a
know,
topic.
it's tough.
I think we have a topic for a whole separate webinar. All right, so I'm going to close it out real quick. I would love from each person just a quick one sentence. If you're talking to a product manager who is struggling to influence, what's your one piece of advice? And let's start with Doug.
I really want to replicate the Steve Ballmer, developers, developers, developers. And I want to say relationships, relationships, relationships.
Boom.
That's it.
How about you, Lincoln?
Gosh, it's related to relationships, but make sure you know where they're coming from.
Excellent. Pamela.
They covered a couple of ones I would have. I think the one thing I changed was my ability to stand still, to just not fidget and allow my words to soak in. That's what I would recommend.
And Nancy.
I would say similar. I would say be flexible in the position when you influence other people. Negotiating influence to me is the same thing. When you influence other people, be flexible with your position.
And Bill.
I think for a PM that's looking to improve their skills in influencing, over-prepare, go into meetings, treat your audience as customers and develop a persona for your audience. Like, what are their needs and how can you speak to those needs in the messaging that you're about to deliver? So yeah, over-prepare.
Awesome. All right. Panelists, thank you so very much.